Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Root to Ring. I'm Abby, your host and fellow mom in the middle of messy motherhood right alongside you. I'm so excited for our topic today. As I've mentioned, and it doesn't matter what time or place you're listening to this, but in this season, October 2025, I've been wanting to focus in on what I'm calling the root work. Last week we were talking about values-based parenting, and today why I'm so excited is because this is like part of what really inspired me to start my parent coaching business specifically, to really hone in on some of these frameworks, to really start sharing the work that I do with people is because of this topic today. Because I've seen so many moms struggling with this idea of the places that you have come from, thinking about the patterns that helped shape who you are. And that's some of the root work we're going to be talking about today, is breaking the patterns that broke you without blaming your parents. Now, quick disclaimer, I do realize there are some people that may still need to blame their parents. I understand that. But I also hear it from my clients all the time where they're like, Abby, I know my parents were trying their best and like they did not do the best job ever. Different times, different cultural and societal kind of factors in place. We can assume they were doing their best and also recognize like there are some areas that they probably fell pretty short, failed pretty hard. And like I talk about, that you are not a failure. You are not failing. There are moments where like you might fail, but that doesn't mean you're failing all the way. It doesn't mean you're the worst through and through. Vice versa. Your parents might have had moments of failing you, but that doesn't mean like, oh, they're just failures as parents, right? And so that's some of the messaging I want to keep in mind as we're talking through this today. Some of the like, not necessarily even just messaging, but like the heart posture, the attitude that I have is that I make the assumption that pretty much all parents are trying their best, that they are probably doing the best they can currently where they're at with what they have. Oh, goodness. And that we know that there's more that they can learn and grow in so that they can be doing better. So that's part of what we're going to be talking about today, is kind of this like cycle breaking, reparenting, family systems where you are rooted, how to unroot you and make sure you are replanted in healthier soil, so to speak, so that we can really talk about breaking out of those patterns, breaking out of those things that are no longer serving you and truthfully probably didn't serve you when you were a teen yourself. So that's what I'm excited for. We're talking about quite literally the root of where you came from, which is hard, I realize at times, to discuss. And I think it is so worthwhile getting to honor your story, getting to honor your origin, your roots, and also seeing how we can make adjustments to best support you where you're at now and where you want to go with your family. So that's what is on the docket for today. And I know, for those that watch on YouTube or even watch the video version of this podcast, you might be wondering, Abby, what is your background? I was getting so used to those bookcases. But great news, I have been in the process of updating my home office so that it is more friendly for recording my podcasts. So that's what I've been working hard on the past week or so, is just to kind of get this space ready. And obviously it's not ready yet because these walls are still blank. But I am going to be getting some artwork up. I have a plant that I literally have the pot for behind me right here in the dirt. I just need to get the plant itself so that I know it's not all about the visuals, but I do want to be able to like incorporate some of the imagery that we're talking about. So I know the black and white walls and the gray curtain, right? It's not all black and white, that we can live in the gray when we're thinking, is a little bit symbolic, but also I realize a little bit of a change up. So stay tuned, as this space is going to look even more like the Root to Ring podcast studio, so to speak. So anyway, I think those are all the housekeeping things for today. We don't typically have those, but I do want to dive in with our topic this week. So I I'm going to kind of like start off with something that might feel like a hot take. It might feel a little spicy. My intent, again, know my heart, is not to like just blast your parents. It's not to just blast you. But as we're talking about this, you may find yourself saying like, ugh, I just sounded like my mom. Not in a good way. Or, man, I swore I would never parent like this, like my parents did. And yet, here I am. And the thing is, you are not alone. In fact, I would be surprised if you were parenting completely differently. If you're like, Abby, I got this. I'm doing it all. I've got all the tips and tricks. Because truthfully, we don't often find our points of weakness, our points of needed growth, until we have those points of, oh my gosh, that is not at all how I wanted to be parenting. That's how I was raised. I swore to myself I would never sound like my mom, and yet here I am. So today, as we're talking about what it means to break those patterns that really broke you, without blaming your parents, I want you to keep in mind that this is coming from a place of tenderness for you, for them, for your story, without blaming your parents, without blaming you. Just like I don't want your teens to just like consistently blame you either. So we're going to kind of like try to look at some of this, even though I know it's hard, through a lens of compassion. And again, if you grew up in a family where like there's a lot of dysfunction and really unhealthy things that people haven't addressed, please take the time and space you need to recognize like there might, again, still be some blame that is due, and that's totally fair. But for those that are like, I'm kind of in an okay spot with my parents and I'm not trying to just like go back to my roots to blow everything up, that's okay. That's not what we're intending to do. But I do want to dive into the why. Like we talked about last week with our values, I want to talk about why we have some of the behaviors that we have, where some of those things are coming from. And so that's where this first part, we want to talk about the patterns that you never chose. So we're going to start with, you were handed a parenting blueprint before you ever had a child of your own. That blueprint was built from what you saw growing up, what you were praised or punished for in your home, what was safe to feel, what wasn't, what love looked like or didn't. And you didn't choose this blueprint. I realize that, but it did shape you. That's the honest truth, is because now you are here and you're parenting a teenager and you're realizing that some of the patterns that you grew up with might not be serving you and might not serve your teen if you continue that pattern with them. So you're showing up again in your tone, in your reaction, in your body. That's where some of this blueprint is showing up. And again, it's not to shame or blame the blueprint. It's just to say, hey, we need to make some adjustments here. This doesn't seem to be helping anymore. And so instead of tearing the whole house down and ripping everything apart, let's make repairs where repairs are needed, so that we might need a sturdier foundation in one area. We might need a stronger wall in another. Let me let you in on my brain process for a moment. I started to think about a house, that it doesn't mean we need to tear the house apart. It just means we might need to reinforce the walls. It might mean like, hey, there's a patch here or there that needs to be done, but it doesn't mean that the house in and of itself needs to be ripped apart. The house is great. It's a wonderful house. We love that house. We want to take care of this house and make sure that it's going to be around for such a long time. And also we want to make sure that the holes in the walls and the things that are causing damage in the house and the way that the house is functioning is actually going to be addressed appropriately. So please forgive me for just comparing us all to houses, but thinking about these blueprints and thinking about what needs to be adjusted. Again, it doesn't mean that you're failing if you are parenting the way that you were parented, but it does mean you're becoming aware that that's not how you want to parent anymore. That some of those patterns that you grew up with, the ones that are showing up again and again, that you are wanting to adjust and change those so that ultimately you can adjust and change the legacy of your family. So what I want to talk about in this next section is the idea of ownership without shame. So let's pause for a moment of truth, because this is where a lot of the moms that I work with, like a lot of my clients, a lot of what I'm seeing in my work, in my field, is this is where people are getting stuck, is the idea of ownership without shame. And I will say, because I've worked with a lot of teens as well, and I think that's some of what we are having to culturally fight back against, is kind of this like blame game with parents, that it's all the parents' fault. It's all on you. You're the one that did X, Y, Z. And like you've heard me say time and time again, take ownership for what is yours. And also, do not take ownership for the things that are not yours, the things that you do not need to be blamed for. That's part of what I want to help you master and understand, so that you can then convey to your teen, to your children, hey, I'm human. I'm going to make mistakes. I'm going to take ownership for my stuff, and I will not be taking ownership of your stuff. That you have to learn how to take ownership of those things. That you have to take ownership of the consequences of your own actions. And it doesn't mean that we play the blame game with your kid, and it also doesn't mean that your kid gets to play the blame game with you. It just means you're going to own up to your stuff, and you don't need to feel shameful about it. Because when I even talk about this idea of like reflecting on where you came from, a lot of the moms I work with are like, yeah, my upbringing was like a little bit rough, and things were definitely a lot harder then, and I was not raised at all like the way kids are being raised these days. But I think sometimes too, even acknowledging there might have been hurts, there might have been things that were ineffective in their parenting that did have a lasting impact on you. It doesn't mean that we're just completely blaming them. It does mean that we are recognizing and addressing where some of these hurts are coming from. But that's part of it, is even though we can identify the source, the ownership part is that you are the one that has to do the work in yourself. So I hear moms say, where they're like, I don't want to blame my parents, but I can't deny that their patterns are still living in me. Like I was talking about with that blueprint, of course they're still living in you. That's part of how you were raised. That's what you are used to. So you don't have to choose between honoring your past and telling the truth about your pain. You can name what hurt you without villainizing your parents. And I know this is like the third disclaimer, but again, just for those that like really did not have healthy parents that were mistreated, I do understand if you need to place blame on them, because there is a time and place where people do fail and like hurt others. And we can have grace and compassion, and we can also speak in truth. But for the majority of people that don't want to villainize your parents, you do not have to. What I'm saying is you can take ownership of your growth without carrying shame from where you came from. And most of all, you can do this work with grace, because ownership is not the same as blame. That's again what I was saying, is like ownership is saying, this might not be my fault, but it is my work to do. So in the next section, I just want to think about why patterns stick even when we, quote, know better, right? Because why is this so hard when we know better, when we know what to do, and yet we still find ourselves falling back into these patterns, these things that we don't want to do, that we swore we'd never say, and the ways that we're showing up, and it's just like, this is not who I am. I know better, yet why do I feel like I'm not doing better? And so thinking about the patterns that shape you, it didn't just happen in your mind. We talked about this, I think, 2 or 3 episodes ago, but a lot of that got ingrained and shaped in your nervous system. So, those like fight, flight, or freeze responses, those aren't just like cute, fun terms to be like, oh my gosh, I shut down today because like I was so overwhelmed. Or I was ready to pick a fight with the person at the grocery store because they cut in line in front of me and I am so tired of being overlooked. Or even the flight is just like, my teen rolled their eyes at me again today and told me, Mom, I can't believe you forgot. And I was just like, I also can't believe I forgot. So bye. I'm going to like go hide and maybe cry a little bit into my pillow because I just feel awful. Those things are a part of your nervous system. Those things were shaped oftentimes by the environments you were raised in. And again, it is not to just blame your parents, but it is to recognize, hey, some of the ways they interacted with you and their reactions toward you did start to shape and cause some of the way that you then show up in your life now. And that's where we address these things, and that's where I want you to work through them so that you can understand and shift your reaction with your teen into a response, because you are helping to shape their nervous system. Your reaction versus response is part of creating their blueprint. And I know even as I said that, I almost felt like a pit in my stomach of like, oh, that is heavy. And I don't want it to feel scary or daunting. I want to welcome you in to a space of change and getting to do something in yourself that might be really hard, that's actually going to significantly benefit your children and their children and their children. So it is hard work. I will not deny that. I was going to say overplay that. That's the opposite of what I meant, but that is hard work. That does feel daunting, and it doesn't have to be. You don't have to carry shame. You don't have to carry blame, especially if you are showing up and trying to do things differently. So back to the nervous system for a moment, like I was talking about with fight, flight, or freeze. Growing up, you probably learned when it's safe to speak, how to handle conflict, whether love is conditional, whether needs are welcome or deemed too much. So that's why you might know all the right parenting tips and still find yourself defaulting to those old scripts, to those old reaction patterns, is because a lot of those things have been ingrained in your system. And even as I say that, I can almost hear the like, great, Abby, you just said this is ingrained in my system, so how am I supposed to even get better with this? And that's where I want to remind you that you're not broken, right? But because your body is doing what it learned to do to survive, we got to help it feel safe. We got to work on shifting those things. And this is where reparenting yourself starts. And I know if you're anything like me, sometimes when I hear the idea of like reparenting yourself, I'm like, that sounds so cheesy. But the reality is, it's just extending to ourselves the things that we needed and maybe didn't get growing up, but being able to still provide for those needs that we have today. And by having those needs met, it can help reparent and then reshape our nervous system and our mindset, and then ultimately the way that we are then showing up and responding with our teens. So, not with shame, but with curiosity, things I want you to be asking yourself is, where did I learn this? Where did this reaction come from? Where did this shutdown come from? Where did this even thought pattern come from? Or ask, who told me that this was normal? And then the reparenting aspect too is, what did I need then that I can give myself now? So I know that these are, again, hard concepts, or not hard concepts, but they're like hard things to practice. But the concepts in and of themselves are fairly simple, in that we can recognize where you came from. We can honor that your parents did their best. We can identify there are areas they might have dropped the ball intentionally or not. Recognize that there might be some gaps in the needs that you have, and be able to meet those needs now. Basically be able to bridge the gap so that you can then show up the way that you want to be showing up with your teen. And it's not to like add pressure to you. There's still going to be some gaps in your parenting, but part of the work we're doing is to make them a lot shorter, to make them a lot less, fewer and further between than maybe some of the gaps that you feel like you grew up with. So in the next section, I do just want to talk about breaking patterns. And that's not equivalent to just burning it all down, right? Going back to the house analogy for a moment, I said tearing it down, burning it down. There's just all kinds of imagery I've had in preparing for this of, we don't have to just start from scratch. But let's be clear that breaking generational cycles can be difficult. And there might be messy moments in it, but it doesn't mean that you're having to just cut everyone off or live in like a constant rebellion. When I say the word boundaries, I think a lot of people kind of hear that as like almost a buzzword these days of like, oh my gosh, so-and-so set a boundary with me or one of my family members and like is not speaking to them. I do realize there's a time and place for like no contact boundaries, but a lot of the time boundaries are just meant for like, hey, I'm not okay with the way that you've been treating me. I can't control you, but I am going to tell you how I want to be treated from now on. And I'm going to be a broken record with that because this might be new for all of us. And so I'm not saying like suddenly you have to just like go ham and be like, I'm done with everybody. I'm cutting everybody off. Like I'm not doing this anymore because I've got to reparent myself. I'm saying if you need to do that, there's a time and place for it. But more often than not, it means choosing what we want to keep, what we're going to heal, and what we're going to release. So you get to say, my parents did the best they could, and I'm doing the work that they didn't have the tools for. You get to say, or excuse me, not even say, but like you get to love them and do things differently. That you get to be grateful and realize you still need some growth. You still have some needs that were unmet. You get to honor the good and name the hard. That two things can exist at the same time. It doesn't have to be one or the other. I'm not reaching my light right now, but I could turn the lights off in my office and still have some light coming in through the window, coming in through my ring light, that there'd be light and dark at the same time, that those two can coexist. It doesn't mean one has to erase the other. And so when we are honoring the good, naming the hard, this is what cycle breaking really looks like. It can be quiet. Sometimes it can be slow. It's more likely than not going to be emotional, but it is generationally significant. When you slow down and choose to do the work, you get to decide how you're showing up with your teens. And though you don't get to decide how they show up for themselves, you really get to model and shape for them how they can. You get to model and shape for them that they get to change the blueprints of things that have hurt them, the things that need to be shifted. That's where when I say it's never too late, I truly believe that. There might be repair work that needs to be done, but we can always go back and work on making things right. We can always learn. When we know better, then we can do better. And sometimes we have to go and uproot what is not working for us so that we actually know what is better for us. So I want to leave you with a small step to start with this. And I want you to reflect on this. Ask yourself today, what did I need as a teen that I can offer my child today? So it might look like more presence, maybe more safety in those bigger emotions, maybe just safety in emotions in general. Maybe it's less shame for mistakes. Maybe it's a parent who says, I was wrong without over-explaining. And you don't have to have all the answers. You don't have to become someone else. In fact, I don't want you to. I want you to be you. And I want you to step into the kind of parent that you are capable of being, the kind of parent that you already are. And we just want to grow you even more. So you just have to keep becoming more rooted. So again, reflect. What did I need as a teen that I can offer my child today? And I might take that one more step further and say, what did I need as a teen that I can offer myself today? What are the things that I'm potentially missed out on that I can reparent myself in? So you can honor your past and still choose something new. That's the beauty of two things at once, right? So if you are doing this work too, kind of untangling what you've inherited so that you can show up more grounded with your teen, you don't have to do it alone. In fact, I know I've been talking about this the past couple weeks, but it's because I'm so excited for the Rooted Parenting Circle. This is my monthly membership for cycle-breaking moms who want to parent with clarity, connection, and compassion without white knuckling it through the shame and guilt. In fact, shame and guilt, they can be tools at times, but more often than not, they are getting overused and we are not leaning into the areas of growth that we really need. The things that the shame and guilt are trying to point out, the signals to us. And that is part of what I'm so excited for in my membership, because we're going to talk about those things. We're going to bring them all up. We're going to work through them. So inside the circle, you are going to get monthly live trainings with me and Q&A calls. This to me is like kind of the bread and butter. There are other tools that I'm going to be giving you. There's going to be other benefits of it, but those calls are really, really what I want you to have. I want you to be able to ask the questions that you're struggling with. I want you to be able to be like, Abby, I don't know what the heck I'm supposed to do with this. Can we talk through it? Can we get some like tips and tricks for how to work through this with our teen or with ourselves or with our spouse or co-parent or whoever? Those are the calls where I want you to show up and get the exact need that you have met. So whether it's through the Q&A calls, whether through it's like the live monthly training or even workshop that we are going to do, I really want those calls to be a service to you. So that's the part I'm most excited for, but maybe you are finding one of the other benefits more exciting, which don't get me wrong, I'm pumped for all of them, but I'm like, anytime I get FaceTime with people is like what brings me so much joy, because then we get to help you have breakthrough and resolution, which is part of what I'm passionate about. But other things are, you are going to get weekly journal prompts and some bi-weekly tools. So the weeks that we're not meeting, I'm going to give you tools and things that you can go and implement and practice. And it's not going to be like a 432-page binder. It's going to be like something short and sweet and actionable. I also want to just create a private, supportive community. God bless Facebook groups. They are getting worse and worse by the day. The more that I am seeing, the more I'm like, I don't want to be on this platform. And I know people mean well, but also it is hard out there. It is hard to go get support when you feel like you are getting berated with 50 million opinions. And so, though I can't control what people say, I can moderate it. And I really want to create a space where moms can connect. I know that sometimes that can be hard, but that's a lot of times too what I hear with my clients is being so steeped in shame that you cut yourself off from others, that you end up not reaching out to fellow moms, not reaching out to friends, just kind of like keeping yourself quiet, hidden. And I want to help create a space for you where you don't have to do that anymore, where you can have connection and community. And thinking about all those pieces, I'm also open if there's other things that people are like, Abby, I would love to add this in here. This would like make it even more worthwhile for me. So please know that though I have a vision of how this is going to start, I also think this is going to continue to grow and transform into the exact thing that you need. I want that for you. So we're going to create that space. I've got one set up and the doors are opening October 28th. I'm just getting like finishing touches on it. And no matter when you're listening to this, you're always welcome. Doors will always be open. So if you're curious, DM me the word circle on Instagram, or you can even head to my website, rootedinresiliencecollective.com. I'll link it so that you don't have to memorize that. But you can get all the details there. And I'm so excited to see you when the doors open. So as we're wrapping up for today, I want you to remember that you're not a bad mom, that you are a cycle breaker, and that you are doing work that is rippling forward for generations. So when you feel like, yeah, this is a little hard, it's because you're doing hard work. But hard doesn't mean bad. Hard typically means you're doing something really good, and it's uncomfortable, and it's worthwhile. So I am cheering you on every step of the way. And as always, you don't need to be perfect. You just need to be rooted.